Alright, so now that we have our application working such that the controller knows when buttons are being clicked and when the frame needs to be redrawn, let's actually do the appropriate action when that happens. So this is the remaining 4 steps that we need to complete. Do make sure that you have the first 6 steps working, otherwise these will not make anything any better. So the first thing that I'm asked to do is create an instance variable of type composite shape, and I'm just going to call it the shapes, or let's call it the drawing, and I'm going to create a new one. And it looks like it's, all of logic is already imported, so I have it available here. Okay, so that completes step 1. For step number 2, I want to update the shape start method, and I want to save the x and y coordinates that comes as arguments in instance variables. So I need to create 2 more instance variables, and I'm just going to initialize these to 0. So I have 2 instance variables that give me the start x and y, or really the top left corner of the drawing that I'm trying to make. Then I have to save these. So instead of printing, I'm going to remove this line, and I want to set start x equal to the x coordinate that comes in, and start y equal to the y coordinate that came in. And that is all that I need to accomplish when the mouse has been pressed. And the next thing that I want to do is, when the shape has ended, I have to do an awful lot of computation here. I want to actually create the shape, but this I want to create as a relative shape, so that if the window is being resized and made bigger and smaller, that the shape just grows and shrinks with it. So rather than an absolute position, I want to do a relative positioning. So that will take a little bit of computation. And to do that computation, I need to know what the size of the canvas is and what the size of the actual shape is supposed to be. So I can look at the width, or the absolute width of the shape, which is an absolute width of the shape is equal to the x coordinate. So this is the ending position minus the starting position that I had saved before. And absolute height of the shape is equal to y coordinates. So that's the ending position minus its starting position. Notice that I'm assuming that the user is starting with the top left and gives me the bottom right as the ending position. And the next thing that I want to do is, so this is the absolute width and size. Now I want to compute relative size. So this is going to be a percentage or a double. The relative x, I have to start with the start x. Okay, that's where I'm going to start with. And I'm going to have to convert that to a double. And what I want to do is, I don't want the absolute position, but what percentage have I moved to the right based on the size of the canvas. Now, where do I get the size of the canvas? Well, as the step number 3 there indicates, I can get that from the frame, and I just have to get canvas width. Okay, so this gives me the relative position of the x coordinate. And now the same thing for the y coordinate. And in this case, I need the height. Now I have to do the same thing for the width and the height. So I'll take double relative width is, and I'll again convert the absolute width. And I'm going to divide this by the width of the frame. And the same thing for the height. Note that I have to do this conversion to a double, because if I do an integer divided by an integer, the result is going to be an integer. And now I need the canvas heights. Alright, so now I've created the X, Y, and the width of the shape. The next thing that I need to do is I need to create the shape that I'm asked to create. Now the frame is what will tell me what is the current shape that is selected by the radio button. So I can get that by saying frame.get selected shape. And what I want to do is build the different shapes depending on which one it is. So this gives me a switch or an if statement. So I'm going to do a switch on this. And in this case, and what I'm going to do is grab the constants that are stored there. So it is called the shape selector panel dot, and let's start with the arc. If it is the arc, I want to create a new arc. So I want to create a shape. I want this shape to be available outside of the switch statement as well. So I'm just going to do a relative shape. Create the instance and then set it to a new arc. And I need the relative X, relative Y, relative width, and relative height. And I also need a start degree and a curve angle. So I'm just going to set these to these magic numbers of 180, 180 for this exercise. Alright, so that takes care of this case. So a break and shape. And the next one is a circle. So I'll create a circle. Now a circle only needs a diameter, not a height and a width, so I'm going to use the width as the diameter and leave it at that, and do a break. And you see here, shape selector also has an oval, and then the only other one is a rectangle. So also for the oval, I give it the X, the Y, the width, and the height. And then I'm done. And now I'm going to use the default. And the default is going to be a rectangle, which also needs the X, the Y, the width, and the height. Alright, so that creates the shape, and once the shape is created, the only thing that I have to do is make sure that it is added to the drawing. So drawing.add shape, and I'm going to add the shape that I have just created. So now I've computed the shape as it needs to be there, and then that takes care of step number 3. The only step that I still need to do is, oh boy, I am in the wrong version of Java. Alright, I'll transform this into an if statement for now. If it equals that, then I will do that. Else, if it is equal to this one, and I will do the creation of the circle shape. Alright, so the only thing is still step 4, where I want to do something inside of draw, and namely what I want to do is I simply want to draw my shape. The one thing that I need to do though is I need to set the bounding box. So notice that I set everything relative. So when I'm drawing a composite shape, I have to set the bounding box, and in this case the bounding box is the entire canvas. So I'm going to go to my drawing and set the location at 0, 0, because my bounding box is the entire drawing, so that means I start in the top left corner. The width of the bounding box is the entire canvas, so I'm going to get frame.get canvas width and drawing.set height, and I'll get the frame and I'm going to get the canvas height. Then once I've done that, I can simply draw it in the canvas, so drawing.draw it and draw it in the canvas. And that takes care of all the steps, and if I've done this correctly, it should now work. If I save this. So if I do this, a rectangle is dropped, an oval is dropped, an arc is dropped, and I can draw a circle around it all, and a circle is drawn. So this follows the steps of creating a basic start for a drawing application.